Hi guys, Felt Tips here, and this is a super quick tip in response to a user question about how I create the write-on my Felt Tips logo. It's very simple. He was actually asking why it's not in the template. The answer is quite simple. This is an age-old technique, goes way back to when animation was created with a camera with film in, if you know what that is. And yeah, it's kind of a manual trick. It depends what you want to write on in terms of how you do it. It's not something you can really create a template for, unfortunately. So here's how you do it. I've got a still that I'm going to drop into this composition scratchback, and we're just going to make presents right on. I move my playback head to the first frame. I'm going to grab the clone stamp, and I'm going to make sure that it's set to a duration of constant. I'm then going to Alt and double click here to come into the painting. I'm in After Effects 12.0, so that's CC, the current CC version. And all I'm going to do is just resize my brush first of all, hold down Command and drag, or Control and drag for a PC, and then whilst dragging, look over on the right hand side over here, you can see the stuff changing. Whilst I'm dragging, I will then let go of the Command or Control on a PC, and there I change the inner radius. You can see the hardness changing there. So I'll set it for a slightly soft brush, but then I'll resize it and the softness remains set. I'm just going to move along one frame, or maybe even two or three, so that we've got a little bit of space at the beginning. And then I'm going to Alt click in a clean area, and I'm just going to paint off the last little bit of the text like that. Very simple. And once I've done that, I'm going to move on a frame, and I'm going to paint off another little bit of the text. And then another little bit after moving on another frame. And after moving on yet another frame, I shall get rid of another bit. Move on a frame and get rid of some more. Always about the same amount. If you come down to your effects here, you can see that the paint strokes are sort of stacking up in a diagonal manner. You don't have to just do one stroke per frame. You can do a couple of strokes like I'm doing now. If you decide that you actually want that last one on the next frame, just grab it and move it along. But before you start painting again, make sure you click off so that none of these are selected, otherwise it will overwrite your last paint stroke. So I'm just painting away, and I think I will probably fast forward this bit because you don't want to sit and watch me painting all day. It's like watching paint dry, watching Felt Tips do scratch back stuff. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, last little bits, finishing up now. There we go. You can see all of the clones there. Very nice. Close that up, get rid of the clutter, zoom out, and let's just come to 0 and let's just drag along. Oh, and you can see there is the text indeed unwriting itself. And if we drag backwards, hey, it writes itself on. Lovely. So what we want to do is kind of play this backwards. What we do is we select our layer in the composition. We do Command, Shift and C to pre-compose it. That's Control, Shift and C on a PC. We'll call that pre. We'll make sure that this move all attributes into the new composition is checked, and we hit OK. And the layer that we had is now replaced by a pre-composition, which we can see in the project here. Let's create a folder for our pre-comps, and let's just drop that into it to keep it neat and tidy. Okay, so we're still going backwards. What we do next is we come to Layer, Time, Enable Time Remapping, and I'm just going to switch the two keyframes that get created around. Like that. And we can see that the text now starts to write on at about 120, so, or 180, no, there you go, you can see 120. So I'm going to put a keyframe there and delete this previous one. We can see it finishes writing on at that frame there. So I'll put a keyframe there and delete the one afterwards. And then I can just move this write on to anywhere I like. We'll have it happening between 1 second and 2 seconds, something like that. There we go. And now when we play this through, hey presto, we see our text write on. Now the particular user in question who was asking this question actually wanted to use this as a kind of transparent matte. So here's how you do this. You make a new solid, just to make any kind of background, we'll make a gradient ramp, which used to be called ramp. And let's just give it a colour. Let's go from a kind of pinky colour down to a sort of bluey, maybe slightly cyany type of colour. Something like that. And we'll put that underneath. But you can't see it because it's underneath the top layer. So what we'll do is we'll come to this top layer and we're going to do a colour correction to, I said a colour correction, hue saturation to desaturate the whole thing. Nice and easy. We will then put a curves and we'll change the top part of the curves until everything that's light turns white. And you can see it's white because of the RGB values up there. We'll then drag this one here until everything goes black, pretty much. We can try and tweak it a little bit. We'll perhaps do something like that. What I'm keen to do here actually is to just preserve the nice edges. If we go too hard and we kind of make everything pure black and pure white, you can see it's a bit scraggy on the edges. So what I'll do is I'll just adjust these so that we're pretty much black and white, and that everything that's sort of immediately around the text is pure white, and the text itself is pretty much pure black, but that we're keeping these nice edges. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to draw a mask on here, just around the text like this. I'm going to make sure that the mask is set to none, and then I'm going to use a generate fill effect, not a fractal. Always get the wrong, always get the wrong one. Generate fill. There we go. Set the fill color to white. We will set the fill mask to mask 1, and we will invert it so we fill everything but that. Next up, I'm going to use a channel invert effect, just to invert the whole thing, and then I'm going to use a channel set channels effect, and I'm going to turn all of the red, the green and the blue to off, and that will give us a completely black layer. But I'm going to set the alpha, the transparency, to the luminance that we just created, and you can now see that we get black text on a transparent background. Let's just turn the transparency on, completely see-through. Now we can refine those edges just a little bit. What I would be inclined to do is perhaps use a very, very gentle blur, maybe 0.25 of a pixel. It just softens it a tad, maybe even less, 0.15. Might just do the trick. And then, because I don't want it to be black, I'm going to use a color correction tint effect to tint it to like a kind of dark blue color, something like that. And now, when we zoom out and play this thing through, you can see we have a dark blue Felt Tips presents over the top of our background, which is here. That's how you do it. Hope you enjoyed it. My name's Felt Tips. Thanks for listening.